So on these lesser charges, some of these lesser charges, such as so-called endangerment, stuff like that, could still carry some pretty stiff jail sentences, and with the discretion of the judge, up to 10 years. Now, assuming self-defense is upheld, they could still try to nail him on these lesser charges, such as quote-unquote provocation or reckless endangerment of bystanders, even though no bystander was hurt. But they could still try that. Number one, having profound effects by setting precedents and narrowing people's right to self-defense in Wisconsin, and also by sending this kid to jail. Now, the other side is happy to pour mobs into the streets to overturn any verdict or investigation or the hint of any process that or laws that they don't like. The good guys, unfortunately, we don't operate that way. We have extremely skilled and lethal skill sets on our side, but unfortunately, we don't see things their way, and we don't pour mobs into the streets to protest these things. We still operate under a basic assumption that the rule of law is taking place, even when it's not, and unfortunately, that may be our undoing. The concept that if Kyle Rittenhouse goes to jail, even for a month, for something he clearly didn't do, some reckless endangerment bullshit, or some provocation, which is as ridiculous as a girl in a short skirt was provoking a rape, if he goes to jail simply to appease the mob, the rule of law will have lost. And the good guys, so-called the patriots, by tolerating that, will be giving in to the mob. This is more than, obviously, it's more than a trial. It's a culture war, but on top of that, it's a referendum on our system of justice. It's on whether or not we get to have a system of justice, however flawed and however subject to money and other things, or are we going to have rule by the mob? Trial by juries, or are we going to have trial by lynch mobs? And by media. That's going to be the question, and let's come down on the right side of this, and there's only one side. Well, this really, really brings home and really illustrates and concretizes what the abstractions and the illusions that the framers were making when they talked about democracy, the dangers of democracy, and the rule of the mob. Well, what did they mean? They meant exactly what they said, the rule of the mob. They meant riots. They meant terrorism. They meant people murdering, burning, looting, and murdering in order to change the outcomes of trials, of investigations, of political elections. This is what the framers were talking about when they wrote in the Federalist Papers and elsewhere. We don't want direct democracy because it always devolves into the rule of the mob. You need to know what that looks like. All you need to do is look at the news or maybe look out your window when those riots are coming through and burning everything down. The outcome of this is not as certain as things were last year because I don't think the political climate in this country is changing so that they can't necessarily pull mob preemption of justice anymore like they did last year, or like they did with the Jacob Blake himself and his crimes, or like they did with George Floyd, like they did with Derek Chauvin, like they did in so many cases. They're not going to be able to preempt real justice with mob justice. Now, the jury still might be biased or stupid or make the wrong choice, but at least it's going to be a jury decision and not a mob decision. I don't think they're going to be able to wield the mob and threaten the jury like they did in the Chauvin trial. The political climate in this country has just shifted, like seismically. The momentum has shifted.
Seniors will be able to pay for a year's worth of groceries with the savings from the Flex.
This fucking recorder puts a commercial on while I'm recording. The fuck? But the political climate has changed. I don't even know who Youngkin is or what he's going to do or what his secret ties are. I don't know if he's a Bush Republican. Those people are mad. They're going to hold him to whatever promises he made, supposedly. So it's not even necessarily so much about him as it is about what those awakened populists. The sleeping giant has awakened, and they're going to be progressively harder to fool. So, they're awake. They're awake now. They woke somewhat with Trump. They were sort of put off their game. Various tricks were used. Trump was demonized and so forth and so on. We were divided, demoralized, and everything. But these people are awake now, and they're more united than ever. Now the conservatives and moderates can have the unity in opposition to complete pieces of shit, aka the Brandonites, that the left tried to impose on the entire country against Trump. But this is actually going to be real.